Hello everybody! In this video I'm going to demonstrate how to record a macro which will help you to speed up formatting. This method can be used for any formatting, no matter how simple or complicated it may be. The most common way to record a macro is to use the macro recorder that's built into Excel. To use this, you must have the Developer tab enabled on the ribbon at the top of the screen. If this isn't visible, what you'll need to do is right-click on the ribbon and then select Customize the ribbon from the pop-up menu. Down the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a list of all of the ribbon tabs which are currently displayed. They will have a tick inside the box. If you don't have a tick in the Developer box, then you'll need to tick that and then select OK. And now the developer tools will be displayed at the top of the screen. On the Developer tab, you can see that we have a button called Record Macro. What I want the following macro to do is to format my cells as kilometers. So what I need to do is set up a custom format to do that. Using the macro recorder allows you to record the keystrokes and the mouse clicks and play them back again later. When you record your macros, however, Excel is really literal about the recording that you do. So for example, if I clicked onto cell B7 whilst recording and then I press the down arrow key, cell B8 is selected. And Excel records those absolute cells so that when you play back the macro, even if you start with the active cell in A1, you might expect Excel to move the active cell down one, but it doesn't because you recorded starting in B7 and you moved down to cell B8. So it plays back exactly those same keystrokes. If instead you want the macro to be recorded relatively so that the macro moves down one cell instead of moving to cell B8, then you need to instruct Excel to do this by using the Relative Reference button. The Relative Reference button is found on the Developer tab and by default it isn't activated. So all macros which are recorded as absolute keystrokes. So what I'm going to do is press the Use Relative References button in, and that tells Excel to record relative references. So I'm going to start recording my macro, and the first thing that I need to do is give it a name. So I'm going to call this macro Format KM, and you'll notice that I haven't used any spaces in the macro name, and that's because macros do not allow you to have spaces in the names. The next thing that I can do, I've got a choice of how I choose to run that macro later, so I could assign the macro to either a keyboard shortcut or I could perhaps create a button on the toolbar. You can see up here that I've got a little smiley face button that I've created in a different example, but for this one I'm going to use the shortcut key Control Shift and F, and that reminds me that it's a format that I use frequently. And I'm also going to store the macro in the Personal Macro Workbook so that it's available to any files that I use in Excel. The description is optional, you could fill that in at the bottom, so just to remind myself that this macro is used to format values as kilometers. And when I press OK, the macro will then begin recording. So you can see the Stop Recording button at the top on the Developer tab in the Code group of commands. So how do we create a custom format in Excel? If you read my previous blog post, then you may already know how to do this, but I'll give you a quick example. So as you can see, I'm now recording all of these keystrokes, and what I'm going to do is click onto my Home tab, select from the number group of commands the arrow in the corner, which will take me into the Format Cells dialog, and then on the number tab at the top I select the custom option. Because I want the cells to be formatted without any decimal places, I'm simply going to choose the 0 option from the type list, and then because I want to include text after the value, I'm going to surround the text that I want to use using text qualifiers, or speech marks as some people call them. So you can see there it's giving me a preview of how my sample data in cell B2 would be displayed using this format. Press OK, and that's then applied, and I'm then ready to stop recording. So back to the Developer tab and then stop recording. So now if I select a cell or cells and I use the keyboard shortcut Control, Shift and F, you can see that it automatically applies the format that I've just recorded. And it was really important that we recorded that using relative references. If we hadn't pressed the Use Relative References button prior to recording, then Excel would have always formatted cell B2. So I hope you found that useful and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening.